Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to Soul Empowerment with your Soul Empowerment guides, myself, David McLeod, Stephanie Benedetto Padovani, and Nancy Stevens. Today we're going to be talking about forgiveness, and we're talking about forgiveness from the inside specifically, because we believe that that's where it really comes from, and that's actually where it goes back to. But let's get us started. I'll just introduce myself. My name is David McLeod. I am your life mastery coach. I am the author of a book called A Life to Die For. And I love doing these presentations, teachings around life mastery and how we can just live a better life. That's who I am. Stephanie, would you like to go next?
Sure. I'm Stephanie Benedetto Padovani, a wild creation coach and soul storyteller at theawakenedbusiness.com. And I work with creative entrepreneurs, especially coaches, healers, therapists who are changing the world, to help them create a business that really fits them, that is aligned with their soul. So that's what I'm doing these days.
Thank you. Welcome, Stephanie. Nancy.
Well, hello, I'm Nancy, and today is my birthday, so it's an extra celebratory day. I just had to say that. When I'm not celebrating my birthday, I am an intuitive life and health coach. I specialize in mind, body, fitness classes, and my work on the mat moves me in the type of coaching I do, mainly with women, for empowerment and authenticity. And my life on the mat, and what we're doing here is all integrated and very beautiful.
Well, thank you, Nancy. And by the way, Nancy, I have something that I want to say to you.
Yeah.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Nancy. Happy birthday to you.
All the feels.
There you go. By the way, we had planned that before you even came on. I knew it was your birthday, and I mentioned it to Stephanie. I said, maybe we can surprise her. But you basically stole our thunder, as usual. And, of course, I forgive you. I forgive you.
This is going to be a lively...
I forgive you more.
Let's just make the whole show about all of us. And those of you on, let's just make this one big love and forgiveness fest, because really that is the essence of what it means to live. Just keep forgiving.
Yeah. Well, actually, that's a great place to start, Nancy. I think you're absolutely right. I think what I like to tell people is love is forgiveness. Love is forgiveness. And it's something that, resonates in my heart. And forgiveness is something that I think is largely misunderstood in our world. I think that people have this idea that, as an example, if I forgive someone, that means that I'm basically saying that what they did was okay, that I'm all right with it, that, I'm never going to forget it, all that kind of stuff. And I honestly don't think that's even remotely close to what forgiveness is all about. And that's what I want us to do today, is to talk a little bit about this concept of forgiveness and maybe learn how we can bring more of it into the world without in any way disempowering ourselves in the process. That's kind of how I see it.
Yeah. Well, what not a better way to show today than with everything that is going on right now. I think that we knew, but we didn't know that we needed to do this show today.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've been doing a lot of work internally on this whole process and factor of forgiveness. And it's I think it rests on the foundation of love, self-love, extending that out from deep within.
Mm-hmm.
That's beginning to be a really major thread of my life. I've had a lot of personal things occur this year, and I guess with the external as well. And that message just comes every day to my life, is love. And how do we live in that? How do we apply it? How do we listen to it and respond and give?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah,
Yeah.
Stephanie, what's your perspective, right, to get us started?
Mm. I feel like I want to learn more about, Nancy, your experience of forgiveness.
Mhm.
In particular, I feel like you're seeing something, like when you talk about it,
Mhm.
that like a depth in it or something that it's intriguing me. So
Yeah.
that's where I'm coming from at the moment. And I've been reflecting on
Yeah.
my own experience of forgiveness. It's not something I've ever focused on, but it's something I've found through other things. So maybe it'll make sense to talk about that more in a personal, like if I share a personal story, I can
Yeah.
talk to that a little bit more. And I'm really wondering, like, I think I want to hear us talk about what is forgiveness. And also, by the way, as you're listening and watching, you who've joined us, please post please put in the chat if you have a question about forgiveness.
Yeah.
If you have ideas about forgiveness that you'd like us to discuss, we're really here to be open and see new things and invite you to join us in that. So, are there things that areas where you'd like to forgive yourself, where you'd like to forgive others, where you are refusing to
Mhm.
forgive, and what that looks like for you? I would love to know.
Yeah, that's great. And I think that's a great place to start. Like, what is forgiveness? I don't think it's something that's easy to define, even though dictionaries have tried for years, I'm sure.
Mhm.
Um, in my view, forgiveness is a process, for me anyway. Now, this may
Mhm.
or may not be true for other people. For me, forgiveness is a process of liberating myself from my own pain. That's really all it is in a nutshell. And one of the ways that I do that is by noticing, who am I holding responsible for my pain? Who am
Mhm.
I blaming for all the things that are wrong with me? And how is that serving me? So I often come to this, and I used to be really good at blaming people. I mean, it's such an ingrained habit that I still find myself falling into that habit from time to time. Oh, it's your fault. It's your fault. I have to actually uh, stop myself and say, whoa, wait a minute. If I'm sitting here putting blame on somebody else, I'm refusing to take any responsibility for it from my own side. And if I refuse to take responsibility, then I'm in no position to free myself from my own pain. Because then what I'm doing is I'm hanging on to something, hanging on to
Mhm.
some idea of judgment or what's the other word I want? I have a grudge against somebody, and my ego mind loves having a grudge. It gets to be right at someone else's expense, you see. But forgiveness is a way for me to release all that and to say, okay, you did what you did. It had this impact. I responded in this way. I suffered whatever I suffered. Now I'm choosing not to suffer anymore. I'm choosing to release that. I'm choosing to forgive you. But it's not necessarily about saying I forget everything that you've said or done. It's not about saying I think what you did was right or okay. It's simply saying I'm now releasing it. I'm no longer connected to it. That's how I see forgiveness. And that was my 5-word definition.
Yeah.
I'm sorry it took me like 150 words, but you get my point.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, good question. Thank you, Alexa. We're definitely going to get to that. I think
Oh,
this is
yeah.
good.
Yep.
Alexa, thank you for that question. We
Mhm.
will definitely be coming back to that, and I'll make sure I state the question full out so people who
Yeah.
don't see the chat can know what we're talking about. Anyway, did you guys want to respond to that? What I said?
Yeah. I mean, that was really, I totally found myself moving into your words and really feeling them. Because my journey mirrors yours in that it's giving myself compassionate permission to no longer have that pain, that pain in my life, disconnecting from that in a way that is whole and nurturing for myself and the other person. it's releasing that negative energy from both parties.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think that what we're saying, what we seem to be saying here, is that forgiveness is really something that we do on our own, that really has nothing to do with the other person. It involves them in a way because whatever story that we're making up about them, that we're telling about them, and by that I mean all things that we make up, or all the things, all the stories, are all the thoughts we have are stories. In that sense, that I'm using this phrase. And that it's something that we do in ourselves for ourselves that doesn't even need to involve the other person necessarily. And I've been thinking about what is my experience of forgiveness, and I can't remember a time when I specifically set out to forgive someone or to forgive myself. I think I have said the word forgiving myself, maybe myself I have. But where I've found forgiveness is through acceptance. So
Yeah.
empathy has been such a big part of the lens through which I look at the world, which has, it's a gift and it's also got a shadow to it, where, well, if you look at the Enneagram stuff, right, the shadow side of over empathizing is denial of the self, which is not true empathy, as far as I'm concerned. So I've found through acceptance that forgiveness happens on its own. It's like when I truly accept myself or the other.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So I really want to highlight what you just said there. I think that you hit on something that I believe I've been saying this myself, and I totally resonate with it. Acceptance is the starting point, really, of all personal growth. If you are not able to accept what is, then you're going to keep having this idea that you can control it, you can change it, you can create what it is you want. And hey, Ricky, I'm sorry. Would you mind turning off your camera, please?
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you. Anyway, and so the idea is that you have this sense of acceptance. And acceptance, again, doesn't mean you agree with it any more than forgiveness means you agree with it. Acceptance merely says, oh, this is what is. This is what is. And if you can do that without any kind of reaction or response, that is really true acceptance. Now, forgiveness really generally involves another person, right? Acceptance could be just a situation. You're just trying to accept the situation. You're not necessarily focusing on any one person. But forgiveness definitely involves at least one other person, sometimes a group of people. And you have somehow come into this way of thinking that that group of people is responsible for the suffering that you're experiencing right now. And this is where I think that you're right, Stephanie, and it's so important to understand that the suffering is just something I have. It's something I have within me. It may or may, I don't think it's right for me to ever blame my suffering on someone else. Yes, someone else may have done something specifically to me, but how I respond to that is my responsibility, right? And this is the thing that many people have a hard time with. And our ego minds absolutely want to get us going on blaming the other person, reacting, fighting, getting into arguments, all that kind of stuff. Whereas our soul simply says, oh, this is just something that happened. It just is. And I can forgive it compassionately. This is where the real difference comes in my view.
Yeah, that's a big deal. I think for me, the journey of forgiveness lay in my ability to, I guess, number one, really become aware internally that I was processing a lot of stuff. So I had to actually have that deep awareness, begin to accept it, move from reacting and learning how I'm learning how to respond. That the truth of what needs to be learned and experienced by me so I can continue to grow is there. That's a big part to me of the forgiveness cycle, is the ability to tune into our response, because
Yeah, nice.
because how we're able to respond, I believe, like you said, will either create more reactions and more negativity, or it can create a lot of open space for learning within us.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's my journey right now, by the way. It's a response.
Really,
Really,
and I own that I'm on that journey too. So thank you.
yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
it's a big factor. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So the
Mhm.
experience of forgiveness that comes up for me when I think about it, and this has been a lifelong process for me too. So I had a lot of pain during my childhood that I blamed on my mother. And notice even the way I'm saying that right now, like I had pain I blamed on her. So I was very, very angry at her for a lot of things.
Sure. Yep.
Many of the things that she did, the situations we were in, we moved a lot, we moved constantly. There were men in and out of her life, it was, and I never felt like I got what I wanted from my mother as a mom.
Mm-hmm.
And even, I think it was probably about 5 years ago, I was trying to understand and I couldn't. I just wanted to understand because most times I can find a way to understand other people. And I was like, why, why? And I
Mhm.
had this belief. I don't know if it's actually true, but it's something about it feels true to me that we choose who we are in this life. Like there's something about it that feels like it's chosen by us. And I don't know if that's literal or if it's just a nice way to think about it. I have no idea. And I thought, if my mother could choose anything, why would she choose to be the way that she is? And as I asked that question, I heard the answer because she loved you that much. And I went, what?
Mhm.
Yeah.
What? And in that moment, I saw something different. I saw that it was almost like we had this agreement and somebody had to be the bad guy. And again, like whether that's true or not, I don't know. It's not, my mom wasn't a bad guy, she isn't the bad guy. And since then I've been able to see and imagine what it's like to live as her, and this is what helps me to find forgiveness without even thinking about it, is to say, how would this person be feeling and thinking on the inside if they behaved this way towards me, or towards someone else. And then I start recognizing the immense amount of pain that they have inside of themselves. And that
Mhm.
has nothing to do with me at all. Has
Absolutely.
nothing to do with me. And so the idea that I need to blame them for something, it's like I come back to me and say, all right, what's mine here? And that's mine to deal with. What they did has nothing to do with me. And when I start to really get that, forgiveness just sort of happens.
Beautiful. Well, Stephanie, first of all, I wanted to say thank you so much for sharing your heart with us. I love that. And I also want to say that I'm now beginning to understand why you and I seem to sync up so well, because I had almost exactly the same experience, with my mother. And it, it, it took me a long time. I think I was probably in my 50s before I was able to forgive her. So, I lived 50 plus years of my life in this anger that I was blaming my mother for. And I don't remember exactly when that shifted, but I do remember that it did shift. And one day I was able to look at her and say from my heart, wow, this is a person who just loved me the best way she knew how, with the tools that she had. And she's helped me in her own way to get to where I am today. If not for that teaching, would I be here now doing this today? Well, maybe, but it seems like that what she did for me as part of her own life journey was something that helped me to get where I am today. And that once I learned to forgive her, I realized I wasn't forgiving her. I was releasing myself from the attachment to blaming her for my situation. That's what really forgiveness was for me in that moment. And that's when I just had that huge aha. Forgiveness is not really for the other person. I might say to you, I forgive you. And that might have an effect on you. It might not. But if I'm saying it from my true heart, when I say I forgive you, I'm doing it for me. I'm not doing it for you. This is the thing that we have to understand. So, we've had a couple of people mention already. Ricky mentioned that she learned it's for me more than it is for the other, and I totally agree with that. I like what she also said. I've heard it said that if you are breathing, you probably need to forgive. I think that's probably true. But I want to get back to what Alexa was asking. If forgiveness is for ourselves and not to be validated by another person, how do we forgive them when their behaviors trigger us? I mean, that's a great question. And I think the answer is actually embedded in the question, but I'd like to discuss it first.
Yeah. What I see in that, because I'm experiencing this in my life right now with a family member, the triggering part. So it's what you said, becoming aware when you feel that behavior begin to trigger you in your psyche or your emotional field. That's when you're going to pause and you're going to listen to what's meant to be uncovered and what you're meant to see through the veil of the pain or discomfort or lack of understanding. That what is that behavior? What is it speaking of where you are in your life? That you are triggered by something that has nothing to do with you, their behavior, their words, that you're getting really triggered by that. Because you're placing yourself right back in to the whole situation. And that's when I feel what I'm learning is when you're able to stand and be in the midst of that trigger, no matter how uncomfortable or painful it is, and able to pause and not to immediately start to blame or react or go there. Then this incredible layer of releasing and learning about what's really meant to be for you will really show up. It's not easy. It is not, because we're in humanity. We were always meant to be, I guess, sadly, defend or offend or be at war or be violent and immediately react to save ourselves. And this is showing up a different side, but it's very powerful when we can sit through that really intense stuff and see what plays out in us. Because I think that's what it is you're meant to clear something in you. That person's behavior toward you or whatever, if they say it or do it, is meant to clear something up for you.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
I totally agree with you.
It's so, I know I'm being triggered right now. No, not really.
Well, actually, that's a good point. That's a good point. And I'm glad you said that. Yes. What is positive resonance? Mm-hmm. It's just another form of trigger, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Negative resonance is what we normally associate with the word triggering, a negative resonance. But it is resonance nonetheless. It's something that's happening inside, and I either feel good about it or I don't. If I feel good about it, then I agree with you, and we're all, kumbaya and all the rest of it. If I don't agree with it, then ego minds start getting activated, and we have a big argument.
Yep.
That's what happens.
Yeah. And in our society, we don't like discomfort. We don't like pain. It's deemed ugly, hurtful, harmful. So we want to, like what's going on in the world, in our nation. I mean, it's painful. It's considered hurtful, harmful, ugly. And all of what we're talking about today is in line with everything that's going on.
Sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. But yeah, that's yeah, when things are going good, yeah, we're like, oh, all right, great. I agree. And then when darts get thrown, things get lobbied, it's a whole nother area. But yeah, that would be my response to you, Alexa, is just to sit with and process you without reacting. And when you do, you're going to go to a deeper depth of maybe something that you need to take care of in you with empathy, with compassion, and with love. And I think in my own life, what is taking place in my house, that's really what I was meant to do, is really move into the depths of how much I can really love myself and really find that. And I almost think that the essence of that forgiveness is in the essence of how much we love ourselves. Because
Oh, that's beautiful. I like that. Yeah.
yeah, I think when I was first learning about forgiveness, I didn't love myself. So I reacted very negatively. It was that person's fault. They caused me to feel this way and I did nothing. Poor me. I didn't get it. So I could say it and do the surface stuff. But what really, I think at the heart of that, how could I forgive that situation when I wasn't sitting comfortably with me, So it's interesting life fabric. Yeah.
The thing that comes up for me as I'm hearing this, and first of all, Nancy, when you say that, it feels so present for you.
Mhm.
Like it feels so, like I feel your experience of it when you say it. And it's really helpful to me because I feel how your willingness to just, okay, I'm letting go. I'm going to be with all of this, whatever all this is. I'm willing to be with it and let it teach me and let it take me somewhere. And that's really beautiful. And I think one of the mistakes that we can make with forgiveness is jumping to it too early before we've actually acknowledged what our experience is. It can become a form of what we might call bypassing, so, and that, like, I'm not angry about that. I forgive you. But there's something there that wants to be expressed or experienced. And I think that perhaps collectively, right now, that may be a part of what we're doing, is expressing a lot of this anger, guilt, shame, fear, all of these things. Jumping to, oh, I forgive you, it's all good, is not going to be helpful before we're actually there. Forgiveness is not meant to be forced. I believe that when we really do enter into that place of, Nancy, as you were saying, self-love and acceptance of what is, it will just happen. But if we try to force it, it becomes more like denial. So what in one person could be beautiful and true of, for example, like, I really no longer hold this person. I don't blame this person anymore because I've let it go. There's forgiveness that's happened. On the other hand, could be, no, I forgive them. Like, I don't have any of that. It can be denial and they can look similar, but they're very different energies.
Yeah. Yes, they are. I guess. Yeah. They are different. They are different energies. And I like your comment, Simone. What if it's not possible to avoid that person that you've forgiven? What do you do?
I think that's a great comment, actually. It's something that we all have to deal with. You have a situation that happened, and I'm thinking of a situation in my own life that happened, I'd say within about the last 4 years or so, where I actually was the victim of a campaign of negative feedback in order to remove me from a position that I was in. And it was painful. It was very painful. The things that were being said about me were not true. There were, and I had a really, really hard time staying grounded in that place. I was going to this place of blaming this person for the things that he or she was saying. And I realized how much I was getting triggered by this. And so the trigger was right here. It was inside me. It had nothing to do with stuff out there.
Yeah.
They were just doing what they did. That guy and the other people who were involved, they were just doing what they were doing. Everything else was my reaction. Now, they, in their own way, probably believed that they were doing the right thing. Okay? And often that's the case. Many of us, we will engage in some behavior because we believe it's the right thing. Or maybe our ego mind gets caught up and says, oh, I have to do this because it's the right thing to do, or something like that. And we don't think about the possible consequences to other people. Right? Now, in my case, I couldn't tolerate the pain that was within me as a result of that. It was just too painful. And I had to forgive them. I simply had to do it for myself. And when I did it, I didn't say anything to them. I completely ignored them. I disregarded them. I had nothing more to do with them. I simply said, this is it. I am releasing this now. I forgive you. I move on. I'm going to live my life. I'm going to do the best I can to be the kind of person I want to be. And I simply will not allow this energy to control me anymore. That's it. Forgive it. Done. Did those people ever know about my forgiveness? No. I did not ever tell them that I forgave them. Have I been engaged with these people anymore? No, I have not. In fact, I have consciously moved myself away from an organization to try and move into another organization that is more in resonance with what I truly want to be and do and have in my life. So sometimes, as you say, Stephanie, we may not be in the place to actually forgive. We may have to go through our response, reaction, whatever it is, in order to get that out of our system so that we can come to the truth and recognize how we're showing up, how I'm showing up, and how maybe I contributed to that. You see? And now that's a hard part, boy, I'll tell you. Wow, these guys are saying all these things about me, and they suck. I don't agree with them. I hate them. And now a part of me says, well, all right, what if what they're saying is true? What if this is actually true? Then what? Oh man, when I did that, when I asked myself that question, I literally took a big deep sigh like I did just now. I thought, oh my God, okay, so maybe I did contribute. Now I can start releasing my ego mind's attachment to justice and revenge and all the rest of that stuff, and start looking at what my heart wants to do. You see? So it's a process, and it's not going to, you don't just simply say, I forgive and it's done. I'm sorry. Most people cannot do that. Most people have to go through their process. Sometimes you have to feel the pain before you can release the pain.
Yeah. If I were to define forgiveness, I would say with everyone, it really is a life journey that with each situation or event or conversation that we are involved in, because we're all part of humanity. And as humanity, we've got all parts. That's when we're going to learn. If we set ourselves up into awareness and acceptance, knowing that life is meant for us to learn all parts, then we're going to move into whatever life gives us. What you shared, David, what things have happened in my life with a better ability to navigate, rather than constantly thinking that it's my job to defend or deflect my territory. It's being able to say, wow, what role did I play? Being able to look at my own garbage. Like, what did I do? Oh, I'm perfect. Well, not really.
There's
Yeah, that part.
there's
Yeah.
a resource for that has been really useful for me, and that is the work of Byron Katie. And in
Yeah, sorry. Hang
particular,
on a second here, Steph. Sorry, Jackie, would you mind turning off your camera there, please? Thank you. Thank you. Go ahead, Stephanie. I'm sorry. You were talking about Byron Katie?
yeah, so she has a book, and in particular the audiobook version of Loving What Is.
Yeah.
The book is great, and it talks about her process that she calls the work um, for helping you to release whatever judgments. In particular, usually the place to start is with other people.
Yeah.
And it can really be helpful with forgiveness. But in listening to the audio, she actually takes people, she does a lot of coaching, and you can listen to her coach people through this process. And there are some really sensitive ones that, be prepared if you choose to listen to it, that involve sexual abuse. And she's taking people through the process of basically looking for their role in it. And she's like, it might be this tiny, but it's like, what's your piece of it? Which is, not something for the faint of heart, but actually it's more natural than you'd think when you go and you earnestly engage with the process. And it's really quite beautiful. I was thinking for Simone, who was expressing in the chat that, how can I forgive this person? I have to see them all the time. How can I actually forgive them? So, and I don't know your situation at all, but what I would encourage you to do, you might actually use the work. If you go to Byron Katie's The Work, I don't know if you're familiar, but you might actually go to her website, and there are worksheets you can use, and you can learn how to do the process. And it's very simple. It's 4 questions, but it begins with judging the person and letting yourself get as petty as you can possibly get. And then asking yourself for each of those statements, is that true? Can I absolutely be sure that that's true? And so many times when there's someone in our lives who's just doing something that we just, we can't forgive them for, I won't forgive them for it. They are showing us, as both Nancy and David have been saying, something in ourselves that we're unwilling to accept. And so we engage with this, and now it's like we feed it, and it's constantly ongoing. But when we're able to look at it differently and recognize perhaps where we have done that thing, where we have been that way, even in a tiny, small, little way, and own it, it falls away, and we no longer have that charge. So that's something that you could begin with is, where are, and again, like, it takes courage. And I'm not saying this is not about blame, and it's not about that this is your fault. It's saying, like, okay, what's my role in this? Because we are ultimately creating the experience we're having of our lives inside of ourselves. And we think that it's because of something outside, but it's always created inside. So that's where we look to it. That's where we can address it, is on the inside. So some more reflection there. And it has nothing to do with this person who you're having trouble forgiving. And you may never have to say a word to this person about it.
Right, right. That's a beautiful reflection, Stephanie. Thank you for that. It just makes me think that, sometimes I'm sure we can all think of situations that we were in that involved one other person, just one other person. And maybe after it was all over, you went back and you looked at it and said, man, I sure didn't handle that very well. I contributed to it in some way. We can all resonate with experiences like that. But I'd like you to imagine something even more extreme. Let's suppose, for the sake of argument, that you, I don't know, you're just walking your dog and some guy walks up and shoots you with a gun. It seems like in that instant, you're completely innocent. You are just walking your dog and you get shot, and hopefully you don't die. But let's suppose that, you go through a process, and now as Stephanie was asking, okay, this guy shot me. I was clearly a victim in this situation. But now if you can dig down deep and say, how did I contribute to that situation? What was my role in that situation? Well, my role clearly was to be walking my dog so that guy would have someone to shoot at. Is it possible that when he shot at me, someone else didn't get shot? It's the possibilities when you think of life that way are so amazing and grand. Now, there might be some reason why your getting shot was important to your growth. I don't know. Maybe it's some kind of a contract that you two had way back in the spiritual world before you came into this physical reality. Who knows? I mean, there are all kinds of spiritual teachers out there who will say things like that. Everything that happens in your life happens for a reason. That's a common statement. Well, okay, so if that's true, if everything happens for a reason, then it's much easier to simply accept it as something that happened. And the forgiveness part is really about me giving up, releasing, surrendering my idea of getting even, having a revenge or any of that stuff, and instead just allowing myself to learn from my experience. That's really what forgiveness is. It has nothing to do with the other person at all, ever. As much as we might think it's about the other person, it isn't. It's only about me. It's about this person right here.
Yeah,
I get long-winded sometimes. Sorry.
That's very, very powerful. And something that it does, you have to be willing to step up to the plate and really go to the depths of your deep essence in order to begin to open the door to learning rather than responding to the surface. We had a huge issue in my husband's side of the family that tore the family into. And it was very, very, they had a lot of negative energy around it and very upsetting. And at the time, we all wanted to respond to the event at the surface, taking sides. And it wasn't until my own experiences in this place that it truly lies within the essence of how the individual has chosen to react or respond to stuff deep within them. That is when, like you said, the forgiveness becomes and flourishes. And it's hard to, it's a challenge to learn how to go there when you aren't self-aware, when you aren't yet self-aware to know that you have a lot of options in different ways, that you don't have to see it in black and white. Well, I'm this way because that happened and this is the only way I can feel. Well, you're always going to stay at that superficial place until you begin to slowly release that. And how do you do that? It's different for each person, but it is very available though. How do I know that? Me, you, Stephanie. Yeah, there's so many layers to the forgiveness that are each a small stair step down.
I had something similar to what you were saying, David, too, except that this happened through very, very close friends of mine. It was a couple of years ago where, we were all very close friends, and they made up a story about me that, now they didn't tell this publicly, but it was nonetheless very, very hurtful to me. The two of them kind of started colluding together and saying that, actually accusations of me traumatizing one of them and being abusive. And my intentions were so far from that. And I had so much love for both of these people that it was like, I felt like I'd been stabbed in the back. It was a betrayal, and it spiraled and actually helped me to deal with a lot of my mom's stuff, because it brought all of the it brought all that stuff up, which I'm so grateful for now, but it was incredibly painful.
Sure.
And one of the things that I had to look at that helped me, as hard as it was to ask myself, where am I an abuser? Where have I abused them? Where have I manipulated them? All the things that I wanted to accuse them of, I started asking myself, where am I doing that? Where am I doing that with myself or with them? And I saw it. I saw how we had co-created it. Now, maybe if we compared, my piece of it was like this and theirs was like this, I don't know. I'm just making that up. But it was there. And when I saw it, I was like, oh. And some new understanding and what I would call healing came of it. And I no longer feel that way I don't hold that against them. It doesn't bother me anymore. I realized what was happening is we were playing out this drama that each of us needed to go through to see something, to learn something.
Yeah.
And it was ugly. And I wish it hadn't had to be so ugly. And I don't believe that we have to do it that way, but sometimes we do.
That's a beautiful story, and you're getting into the topic of shadow, really, which is something that I know we're going to be covering in more detail in another episode. But I just want to point that out, that we all have these shadow parts of ourselves that sometimes act out in ways that we can look at ourselves and say, that really wasn't me. I don't behave like that. That's not who I am. And yet, if you go back and watch a film of yourself, you say, wow, I sure did that, didn't I? And that's what takes true forgiveness and honesty, is to be able to look at your own behaviors and say, yeah, I did that. And now I have to forgive myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I might, in the process, when I'm willing to forgive myself, I may need also to go and make amends with another person. Now, I honestly believe that making amends comes from that true understanding of self-forgiveness. If I just say, I'm sorry and let it go to somebody, I'm not really sorry. I'm kind of just trying to get past it. I'm trying to move on. What I need to do as an individual is to look at the true behavior that I engaged in and honor the truth of it and say, yep, I sure did that. I did that, and I can see where I was coming from my own shadow, that I was doing this or that and the other thing. Most often, if I say that to the other person, they don't care about the apology. That's all they want, is the truth. They want an acknowledgement of how you actually behaved. If in addition, I can say, I can see where my behavior may have caused pain for you, and I want to apologize for that. Now you're just coming from a place of love. If you can forgive yourself first, then you can come to that place of making amends. And I think self-forgiveness is the single most powerful force in the universe. I really do.
Yeah. That is, I believe that's the foundation of forgiving, is the self-forgiveness too. Looking at our own shortcomings and faults, flaws, whatever we want to call them, being able to call ourselves out, because that was another area in my life that I didn't want to see my flaws, because I had so much other, pardon the word, crap going on that, I've got to lay all this stuff out on the table too. That's ugly. Ugh, that's going to, make me feel worse. No, but that's the part of our connection to humanity, is opening that box up and clearing our own box. And then when we say or do things, or, somebody else does, that we are operating from a much more clearer, cleaner energy to handle it.
That I want to speak to something really quickly around, I think, another misunderstanding of forgiveness is that forgiveness is all about me and accepting what happened, and accepting the fact that I cannot control anything about what happened. I can't change it. It is what it is. Then there's something else. Sometimes there's a misunderstanding about forgiveness, that if I forgive, it means I'm going to let somebody walk all over me, or I'm going to let something continue. I'm going to let it happen again. If I forgive, then I'm making myself vulnerable. And in fact, I think the exact opposite happens, that when we forgive, we are actually less likely to encounter that situation again, it becomes easier to say, okay, this is not all right for me. I'm letting this go, but that doesn't mean I invite you into my life, or, we need to change the parameters of our relationship here because this is not okay. It's easier for you to be clear about it than it's easier for me to be clear about it than when I'm all caught up in blaming somebody else.
I totally agree. Totally agree.
Yeah.
By the way, I just wanted to acknowledge some of the
Yeah.
chat exchange that's been taking place here. There's some rather tender stuff happening with Simone. And Simone, I just want to honor you for sharing what you were sharing. The reason I'm not bringing it out onto the recording is because I just don't want to make this public information for people. What I would like to offer you, if you would like to talk about this in private after the fact, please reach out. You can reach out to any one of us. In fact, I'll put my link in there. You can reach out to me, and I'm sure that Stephanie and Nancy will put their links as well. What we want is people to be leaving this. Remember, this is called a soul empowerment, and that's what we're looking to do, is to help everyone empower themselves through their spiritual essence. So I just wanted to put that out there. And also, Ricky, I wanted to comment. I wanted to respond. You've been talking about the truth shall set you free. Shelley mentioned that, and Ricky responded to that. The truth can be freeing if we can reach deep inside and realize it for ourselves and offer it to others as our truth. So that's a beautiful statement, Ricky, and thank you for sharing that. And I think that's what we've been saying here, Nancy and Stephanie, is about honoring the truth of ourselves. I mean, the real truth, not the ego mind truth that we're sometimes get caught up in. And I want to make you wrong because you did this bad thing and blah, 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 blah. And that's all just ego mind bullshit. That's what that is. What we need to do is come back down into our hearts and recognize that people in our lives, even if they do what appear to be just horrendous, horrific things, most of them are doing it out of their own deep, deep, deep need to either give or receive love. It may not look that way to us, but that's really what's going on at the deepest level for them. If we could remember that, it might be possible to remain compassionate, knowing that they may be struggling, they may have deep suffering going on, and this is how they're reacting out of that deep suffering. So that's part of the forgiveness process too, right? It's not about making it okay for them to continue behaving that way, but understanding that the reason they behave that way is because they're trying in their own way, which may be a dysfunctional way, to give or receive love. That's really all I want to say.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah. It's all about go back to the factor of essence of love. Yeah.
Sorry, my dog's here. He just...
I'm curious because we had chatted with Shelley a bit before we started here, and I'm wondering, and there's no pressure at all, Shelley, for you to speak, but if you'd even put in the chat, are you seeing anything different? Has anything come out of this for you, or is there still, would you like to express how forgiveness looks to you so that we can kind of bring that up? And again, no pressure. If it doesn't feel right, just completely ignore me.
Hi, everybody. I would like to say something. I've been a hypnotherapist for 40 years, and everything you have all said is beautiful and stellar and true. And one thing I've discovered in working with clients, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
One thing I've discovered in working with clients is it's not okay for some people to forgive. And the best way to determine whether it's in their best interest to forgive is to put them in an altered state and have their higher self say, is it in my best interest at this moment to forgive this person for whatever reason? And I'll tell you the story of Donna, who weighed 500 pounds, who was molested from the time she was 3 years old by her father. And she became a nun, and she wasn't allowed to ever reveal that she had been raped by her father her whole life. And she was fat because of it, probably. And she, as a result of checking in with her higher self, realized that she did not need to forgive the son of a bitch, and that it was okay for her to give up all of the Catholic doctrines around forgiveness. It was okay for her to take responsibility for her weight and her life and all of that. And the proof is in the pudding. She lost several hundred pounds. So sometimes the best thing you can do, and I'm talking to everyone listening to this, is to take a moment, take a deep breath, and ask your higher self, your all-knowing self, your all-knowing self, your higher self, is it in my best interest to forgive this person? And your truth will be heard, and the proof will be in the pudding. If you feel happy, if you feel neutralized, if you feel in positive neutrality, then you've succeeded. And if you're still agitated, mad, and upset, then maybe you have to forgive. Maybe you have to do something else. But it's not a universal one size fits all. I don't believe. I believe that everything you said is true. That a lot of times we have some skin in the game, even that much, as you said, which was interesting. But yes, of course she had skin in the game. It was her dad. But that wasn't what this was about for her. For her, it was all the snag about religion and about being forthcoming with the truth. So when I say the truth shall set you free, I mean the truth within yourself, and the truth within your interface with your higher self, and the truth then with communicating that outside yourself if you need to. Sometimes, like the case of Daniel Epstein, all those little girls who were forced into sexual slavery, they needed to stand up and not forgive him. They needed justice.
Yeah, what I'm hearing, Shelley, that I think is really beautiful is the validation of, like, for example, in this case, your client's experience and what she knew to be true for herself and what she knew that she needed. And, forgiveness is like, I don't think it's a prerequisite for enlightenment or anything. I think, like I said, I never set out to forgive my mom. It just happened. It
That's
just
beautiful.
somehow, when it no longer, it just didn't look the same way anymore. It didn't look like things were her fault. I actually and now I have a whole other experience of her. I see traits that I never thought she even had. I'm like, how did I, like, what? It's like living in a whole other world with her. So, I mean, I think that's kind of what I was pointing to. Like, don't rush to forgiveness. Don't bypass. It's not something you have to do. I think that makes sense. Like, would you like to? Would it be healing for you? Is it even necessary? And if it's not, then don't. And if you get a no, and if you don't want to, then don't.
Right. I think that we're all in I won't say violent agreement, but we're in agreement here about the topic. My belief is, if I truly want to set myself free of my pain, the best way for me to do that is to forgive the believed perpetrator of my pain, because that causes me to look within and see what it is that I'm really holding on to here. Justice is one thing. Forgiveness is something completely different, and they're not mutually exclusive. They can happen together. I can forgive and still seek justice, or I can seek justice and I can forgive. I don't have to do them independently of each other. What I'm saying is, if I want to free myself from my own pain and from my own attachment to a specific outcome, the best way I can do that is to forgive. Forget? No, I'm not saying anything about forget. I'm saying that forgetting might be actually very contrary to my good health, because if I forget, then I may end up in the same situation all over again. So I believe forgive and remember is a far better teaching than forgive and forget.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
All right. So thank you for joining us there, Shelley. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Shelley.
We'll see you maybe some other time. And we're getting close to the top of the hour here. Is there anything that you want to talk about to finish up before we close out this episode?
I just have been very moved today by the sharing of our people who have been on the show with us and from both of you that just further opens up the doorway for me to gather in your knowledge to contribute to my journey and growth of having that balance in my life and knowing that it really is a personal journey for me based on love to disconnect from pain and open up into my place in humanity.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's been very, very powerful today. Thank you too.
Well, and thank you for being here as always, and happy birthday.
Thank
Yeah, especially on your birthday, sharing that with us.
you.
For all of us here, if there's still unresolved issues or questions about forgiveness or a particular situation, I encourage you, as I will do for myself, as I have been asking of myself of late, to be curious. Don't try to change it. Don't try to force something. Just be curious and allow yourself to, when we're curious, it's like an exploration. It's like, oh, I wonder what would happen what if I did that? What if I thought about it this way? And be gentle and curious and just notice what you see, because I believe that your innate wisdom will guide you in it.
Right. Yeah, that's beautiful. I think curiosity is a very, very powerful quality that we can all learn to cultivate, especially when it's not colored by any agenda. If it's just pure curiosity, I think that's great. I just wanted, before we close, I want to acknowledge Ricky's final comment there about what she's talking about is forgiving somebody after the fact, after they have passed. And I think that's a really important thing to do. I know in my own case with my mother, forgiveness happened after she had died. And my truth is, I wish that I could have done that while she was still alive. Not because I wanted to tell her I forgave her, but rather because if I had done so while she was still alive, I would have opened my heart enough to be able to reconnect with her and have a beautiful relationship at the end of her life. Now, that may not be true for everybody. I'm not saying that that's exactly what everybody should do. I'm only saying that was my experience. And my invitation for all of us is that we learn to forgive. Notice when we're triggered, learn to forgive in the moment, and try to be as compassionate and loving as possible with everyone around us, remembering that they may not have the same tools that we have. So with that, I just want to say thank you all for being here and joining us today. It's just this has been a great conversation. I'm really, really happy about it.
Yeah. Thank you guys. My heart to yours.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yep. Bye now.
Bye.